That's weird. I heard a voice saying
You.
this meeting is being recorded. So now we all know that. I'm Andy Chanley. And the reason I'm recording this is because this is one of those here at home teleconference interviews. And today, really excited to welcome in Shungudzo to 88.5 FM. Welcome. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Andy. Thanks for having me.
And am I saying that right, Shungudzo?
Yeah, you are.
Good. The new single that you've been hearing on 88.5 FM is It's a Good Day to Fight the System. And the new album that comes out this month is called I'm Not a Mother, But I Have Children. And we're going to talk about all of those things. But to start with, I got to tell you, I've been really looking forward to chatting with you ever since the single dropped and we started playing it. And I took a look at your Wikipedia page. It's pretty daunting for us mere mortals. You've done quite a bit. I know I'm going to embarrass you a little bit. You're a scholar. You started studying calculus at age 10, it says. Finished high school by the time most of us started it. An athlete joining the Zimbabwe national team, a gymnastic team at age 9, charity worker from childhood for AIDS orphans and other causes. Then you were on MTV Real World San Diego, and then songwriter for artists like Yuna and Chainsmokers. You've done all of this by the age of 31. It's kind of intimidating, but I was also buoyed by the fact that I'm sure we would have lots to talk about.
Well, I've done a lot of things in my lifetime, but a lot of it kind of came down to the same thing, which was wanting to make the greatest difference that I could in every field that I was in or hobby that I was in, and really looking to how I could use those things to try to leave the world a little bit better than I found it. And I also had extremely disciplined parents who taught me a lot of discipline. And I think that discipline is really the building block for being good at anything. And once you have the skill of discipline, being able to show up and do something, every day for a long time, I really think that we can all accomplish a lot. However, in my, in this moment in my life, I'm also learning how to rest. I'm actually 34. There's stuff on the internet that just isn't right. But yeah, I'm really learning the importance of resting too now, because I think for a lot of my life, I felt like I wouldn't be loved or valuable if I wasn't constantly moving. And I'm finding a lot of value now in stillness and in rejuvenating my mind and my spirit in order to do better work and be a better person in the long run.
Yeah, well, a rest is deserved. I think you put your feet up for a little while with all of the things that you but I bet that's not your plan. We'll talk about what you've got planned, what's in the pipeline a little bit later here. But so I'm curious, you don't start learning calculus in 4th grade if you don't have adults around you that are interested in fostering that in you. Where would you put your parents on the spectrum of 0 being just indulging your curiosities and 10 being absolute taskmasters and demanding that you learn these things? What's the dynamic there?
Wow, that's such a good question. Well, I started 1st grade when I was 3, so I was actually always a lot younger than people in school. And I guess it's really hard because looking back, right, as a kid, I might have perceived them as taskmasters and, do this, do that kind of parents. But perhaps if I took me now and put myself there, what they really were doing was being loving and encouraging me to explore all of the areas in which I had interests or talents. They really encouraged me to try things. And then if I had a natural inclination for them, then really encouraged me to continue trying them. And I do remember I tried something that I was immediately bad at, tennis, and they didn't make me do it. So I don't think that they were as rigid as one may think. I think that if they were truly rigid, they would have said, well, keep on trying and get good at that too. But they really, just encouraged my mind, even in putting me in ballet and gymnastics. That was really for my mind and for my discipline. And I'm really grateful for that. I was never made to feel weird for wanting to spend a whole lot of time alone writing in my journals or reading books. And I was never made to feel really forced to do, I was never made to feel forced to do anything either.
It's interesting though. On one hand, I've always viewed, children that get double promoted or triple promoted as, of course, very bright, but also I've looked at it as, my gosh, there must have been a great deal of loneliness in that, because then the children that you're studying with are not your peers exactly. They're much older. And also, maybe the situation of you being 9 years old and the first white female artistic gymnast on the Zimbabwean national team. There's a great deal of achievement, but also it seems like there must have also been a great deal of loneliness involved with that too.
Yeah, there really was. I was 12 when I became the first woman of color to compete on the Zimbabwean artistic gymnastics team. And I guess in a lot of ways, I was always an outsider, whether it was due to age or due to the color of my skin. Or due to the economic status of my family. Like a lot of my years in gymnastics and ballet, I had scholarships because my family couldn't afford the fees for those sports. I would say that, there's a really fine line between excelling at things and, I would say for all the hours you spend doing one thing, you're not spending those hours doing another thing, and being ahead in school and being so both academically and athletically focused. Like at one period in my life, I was leaving high school at noon to go to the gym to then work out for 8 hours. So I would say I was ahead in a lot of ways, but I was also very behind emotionally when it came to socialization, when it came to mental health and my ability to really handle and heal the parts of myself that were hurting. And it wasn't really until my adulthood that I realized in so many ways I was lacking abilities. And I had to really shift my focus from excelling at these external things to really working on learning and healing myself internally.
I'm interested in your childhood in Zimbabwe, your upbringing. First of all, let me start with this. Your name, and I see it different places, different ways. Alexandra Shungudzo Gover, Shungudzo Kuyimba. Yes, co-writer of some songs. I see you credited. Shungudzo, it's a Bantu word, right?
Shungudzo is in Shona, and it means to be determined.
Okay.
And my dad has always told me that it means to be determined to do something, like he would add a verb at the end of it. So when I was a dancer, he called me Shungudzo Kutamba, which is determined to dance. And sort of in the moment that he finally accepted is a strong word, stopped fighting me on me being a musician, he called me Shungudzo Kuyimba, which means determined to sing. So it's a kind of cool name in that it can kind of grow and change with you depending on your interests or your parents' interests.
That's lovely. I love that. That's great. It's not a tattoo. It's a growing thing. It's a changing thing as you mature. That's amazing.
Yeah, maybe one day I'll get to change it myself too. It's like still up to my dad, but maybe one day I'll get to decide and be like determined to find true love, and then it will find me.
There you go. I like this. That's the final question, I think. Use the name too. You growing up in Zimbabwe, my best friend lived there for a couple years with his wife, and was telling me many stories about how interesting a place it was to live. Robert Mugabe ruled with an iron fist pretty much for almost 40 years, and that's your upbringing, being born late 80s, and so you would have grown up under him. And now we got Emerson Mnangagwa, who is maybe shades better. I don't know. We'll see how that turns out. But,
well, all we know is the military took over a dictator. So
right out of the frying pan into the fire. Tell me what it was like growing up, and tell me if that was a good day to fight the system. If you felt that you had the freedom to do that, or did you have to just express that in poetry and music?
I very much only expressed it as a kid in poetry. I didn't write music as a kid, just poems. In Zimbabwe, there wasn't, and there still isn't, true freedom of speech. Currently, you know, for example, recently somebody tweeted bus fares are too high, or sorry, got on a bus and said bus fares are too high, and the government controls bus fares, so he was arrested. And it's like, you can't even, you know, yes, here in America, a lot of things are very wrong, but at least we have the right to say that they're wrong out loud and to tweet it at Instagram and write songs about it and put them on the radio. And none of those things are technically allowed in Zimbabwe. And they're actually even trying to make it illegal to be a Zimbabwean outside of Zimbabwe and speak about politics, speak negatively on politics there. So I definitely felt this lack of freedom of speech, and also a lack of conversation about all of the things that were going wrong in society. Like at the height of the AIDS epidemic, it felt like the government was still totally ignoring it, both because they didn't want the Western world to, you know, share all these negative stories about Zimbabwe, and also because Zimbabwe is such a morally conservative country in which talking about sex would be very bad. However, the AIDS epidemic is killing our family members and our friends and our communities, and we still couldn't openly talk about sex. So, you know, I just grew up with a lot of, I think, just in general conversation about what was happening in the world. And conversations about what was happening within ourselves. You know, like mental health care isn't really a norm in Zimbabwean culture. I found it to be really difficult. And for me, poetry was where I could express all of those things without being punished or perceived differently. And I guess as a kid, seeing all of these things going wrong, that's what first inspired me to become an activist through my poems. And then moving to America, a place where I thought everyone would be rich and life would just be beautiful and golden. And like in my mind, America was like the West Coast everywhere, like just beaches everywhere. I moved here, I was like, what is this place? There's pain, heartbreak, homelessness, racism, all of these things that I thought wouldn't exist here existed here too. And that further solidified my desire to talk about what's happening in the world using poetry and then eventually music.
Well, to your point, this album and the single were written here in America, not in Zimbabwe. And in this last year, let's see what was going on here. You had George Floyd and all of the related activity around his death, and you had a general election. It seems like you probably would feel like, as a person of color, that there was plenty of the system to fight here in America as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when the Black Lives Matter movement was having its really large collective moment, the Zimbabwean Lives Matter movement was also happening, which was such a big deal because, you know, to see people in Zimbabwe sort of breaking the law to express their disappointment in their government was very brave. And I think just really thinking heavily, not just on that moment, but on a lifetime of either experiencing or witnessing different kinds of inequality, inequity, discrimination. I've always felt like it's very important to use music to talk about those things. And I've been doing it since I started out in music, but it's been so hard to get people to care about my songs. And now, partially because of these, you know, global conversations, I think people are ready to receive the messages in the songs, which I'm really grateful for. Better late than never. Still late, but better late than never.
Yeah. The title, the album title, I'm Not a Mother, But I Have Children. That's a pregnant title right there. I can guess at some of the symbolism, but would you mind sharing your motivation for that title?
What do you think?
Well, on the surface, I thought of it as an artistic reference, in that when you bare your soul and you create music, these songs are kind of your babies. And then you have that long period of when you create them to when they're finally accepted and ingested into the public consciousness, where there's patience and frustration. And then when they're finally out there, then you've got to let them go. You've got to let those children go and do their own thing. You find out that they have a life of their own in the minds of the people that accept them. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. What does it mean to you?
That's so beautiful. That was not at all what I was thinking when I made the album, but that's so true, and that's something I'm realizing now. Like, another layer to what I was doing that I hadn't before. But when I was making the album, when I wrote the song "I'm Not a Mother, But I Have Children," that I then chose to use as the title of the album as well, I was thinking about the responsibility that we have to try to build a better world for future generations of all living things, not just humans, but plants and birds and all living, this whole planet. I think we have a great responsibility to try to leave it better than we found it, and to try to guarantee, first and foremost, life, right? Like, if there's no planet to live on, life can't exist, but, more importantly, the ability for living things to thrive. I think that it's so easy, especially because so many of us are struggling in different ways. Like, I don't think there's a single person on this earth who doesn't have some sort of struggle, whether it's internal or external. I think that it's hard to kind of look beyond the things that we're fighting for ourselves and go, this isn't all about me. But I try to work on doing that every day, and to try to think about the way that my actions will impact other people in the long term. I think there's this sort of, on one hand, yes, we're very small and we're individuals, and our lifespans in the grand, in the grand scheme of things are very short, but also each one of us has, an impact on this planet and on everything that lives on it. And I think it's cool to embrace that power, admit to it, and even cooler to work together for a better world.
I like yours better.
I love yours, though. Actually, a friend of mine got me a little stone to carry around in Italy, and the woman who gave it to him said it was a stone for the fertility of creativity and ideas. And that was the first time I thought, oh my gosh, this album is also that. My first album, my first true full expression of myself as a person and artist. So yours is totally right as well.
I love it. Turning to music, I like asking this question because it says it really is a window into people's souls a little bit. How do you write songs? What was your first musical instrument, or what's the first exposure to music that you had?
Exposure is interesting. I would say that Zimbabwean people are musical people. Like, my dad is always whistling or humming or singing or tapping on things, and he just sort of like emits music. And maybe that's because the village my dad grew up in is a place where people are very one with nature, growing the food that they eat and hunting for the things that they can't grow. And I guess you're surrounded by song and music in that way, like you're surrounded by the birds singing and the wind and all of these beautiful, sounds, which are really the foundations of and the basis of music, come from nature, I believe. So I would say my first exposure to music and to feeling it really just comes from being Zimbabwean, and also from spending a lot of time in nature as a kid. I would climb these trees, these mulberry trees and guava trees, and just sit there for hours and kind of listen and meditate and write. And it was like through listening to nature that I would come up with a lot of ideas for my first poems.
And is it when you write a song, are you writing the lyrics? Are you writing a poem and then ascribing a melody to it? Or do you play something on a keyboard or guitar, or do you sing something into your iPhone? How do you go about making sketches for music?
It really varies depending on the song and where I am. Like, if I have an idea but I'm not at home with all of my equipment, I'll record a little memo of words or melodies into my phone and then take it home and maybe work on it. It's also a bit of an idea graveyard in there.
Yeah.
I would say it really varies, but for this album, I had this one document in which I wrote down all of the feelings and themes I wanted to touch on. So one was like my relationship with my dad, and another could have been, like my mother telling me that anything was possible and that I could do anything. And another one would have been like, my desire to fight the system, but in a happy way, in the sense of like a song that expresses my frustration through actually joy. So I had all these feelings written down, and then underneath those feelings, sometimes like a little line or title, and I worked from that list in order to make the album. So I just went through each theme, and as you know, my gauge for if the songs were done or not was just have I expressed this theme in the best way that I can at this moment. And if so, then the song was done, and then I would move on to the next one. And I did that for all of the tracks, except for the last couple, when I realized I didn't have anything angry on the album, but that just as much as I'm optimistic and hopeful and sorrowful and all of these other emotions about what's happening in the world, I'm also very mad sometimes. And I wanted to be sure to express that range of feelings when it comes to, desiring a better place for all of us to live in.
What's next for you? What's, as we alluded to at the beginning, what's next in the pipeline? What things would you like to achieve in the next year?
Wow. I would like to heal the heartbreak that I'm currently feeling and regain some of the individuality that I had before my relationship. I would like to do more live shows. I would like to kind of like experience this album with other people, because as of now, it's still just pretty much something I've heard alone, listened to alone in my bedroom. And I'd like to begin working on a follow-up album, which is going to be, as of now, we'll see, but I think it's going to be very hopeful.
Awesome. I got to tell you, you're a very beautiful soul to talk to. You exude a positive light, and what's funny is, as I'm talking to you, there is all this time there's been this beautiful prism of sunlight bouncing off of the mirror at the end of the hall there, and coming back and kind of shrouding you with that.
It's my ancestors letting me know I'm not alone, and my heart will heal.
I love that. I love that. Well, I wish you the best of luck, and I can't wait until we can have a session with you and share your music live with our listeners. In the meantime, we've got this single, "It's a Good Day to Fight the System." The album you can go and buy wherever you buy albums this month. I believe it comes out on the 18th of June. It's called "I'm Not a Mother, But I Have Children." Shungudzo, thank you so much for taking time to join us here on 88.5 FM.
Oh, thanks so much, Andy. I really appreciate it. I've been having a lonely day, and this conversation made it a lot better.
Oh, that's awesome. Until next time.
88.5 FM, KCSN, and KCSN HD1 Northridge, Los Angeles. KSBR and KSBR HD1 Mission Viejo. A service of California State University Northridge and Saddleback College. Member-supported public radio. Streaming on the web at 885fm.org.